Hi, I wanna kind of explain the Clash Royale code that I built in my previous videos. At first I'm gonna go over with the paint and then we'll go over with the codes. Now a standard typical Clash Royale game looks like this, right? We have our opponent's card. By the way, I'm drawing it as if we are weaving our opponent's game through another account which I did in my game. 5, 6, 7, um, and 8. So these are the cards that our opponent has. At first, we don't know any of these. These are all or blank. And then as our opponent plays, like let's say they play knight, we know the first card, but still we don't know where that card stands in our opponent's cycle. Now, first of all, I needed to find a method to determine which card our opponent plays, and I realized that when our opponent places a card, there's this small animation, right? And I basically exploited that. So, as you saw in the footage, there is a small brown surface. Let's in here, like there's a small tiny brown surface, right? um and by default, right, that is brown, but when our opponent places a card, as you saw in the footage, kind of gets bigger, and this brown surface is no longer brown, right? It is a different color. And if I somehow made a code that, let's say, continuously checked this brown circle, and whenever it saw a shift, it understands that our opponent placed a card, like the first card, let's say the card from the first float, uh, then we can detect which card our opponent placed by some detection systems, and then basically we know which card our opponent played. So that's the idea that I had, and in my code I again wrote something that continues to check this brown surface, and it made sure to oops, and it made sure to detect which slot our opponent played cards. Now let's say we know the slot number, right? Let's say our opponent played a card that is in the third slot. How do we detect the card? I use something called as template matching, which I kind of stored the cards. Like I entered games beforehand. I took pictures of each card, like this, like this, like this, of all 8 of the cards, and then I stored them in an array. Okay, and in my code, like let's say we know our opponent placed their card in the third slot, I retrieved that data, all of the 8 cards, and I compared the current card with all of these cards. So if you guys are curious, you can just search it up. It's called as template matching. It is really cool actually. It is fast. It accurately matches your template, and also it gives you a probabilistic score of, like, I think in between 0 and 1, if I'm not mistaken. And if it is above like 0.7, then it is likely that those cards are the same. So this was basically the whole idea. And let's also see how I track the cards, right? So we detected card, we know which card our opponent placed. Now we need to detect the order, our opponent's cycle. So I made an array holding 8 cards. 1, 2, actually 8 slots. 5, 6, 7, 8. Just assume this is an array like this. And all of these contain none at first, but as our opponent played cards, let's say our opponent played knight, we update this last slot as knight. Let's say our opponent now plays minions. Now we shift the knight 1 left. Now knight is in here and minions is in here. Basically these 4 cards represent our opponent's hand, and these are the ones that are in cycle. So we shift cards to the left. Let's say our opponent plays 2 more cards. Let's put knight here, minions, let's say musketeers, and let's say giants. Now we still don't know our opponent's hand, right? We have absolutely no idea. But let's say our opponent plays 1 more card, and that is mini Pekka. We shift everything left again, knight, minions, musketeer, giant, mini Pekka, right? These 4 cards represents our opponent's hand, and now we know that our opponent has knight in his hand. Now what happens if our opponent places knight? In this case, well, knight gets pushed to the back and these all get shifted to the left. What if our opponent places something else? Well, in that case, like let's say X, I don't remember. I just shifted that right 1 left, and let's say our opponent plays a random X card. Again, these 4 slots represents our opponent's hands, and now we know our opponent has knight and minions in his hand. These are all out of the cycle. If our opponent plays since knight, this is gonna get pushed to the very left, and all these are gonna shift to the left. Sorry, this is gonna push all the way to the right, and these are gonna be shifted to the left. And if our opponent places minions, then minions is gonna be pushed to the very right, and these 4 are gonna be shifted to the left. So this was basically my idea, and this is also how I tracked cards. Now let's see the codes. Now let's first go over with the interface. I use Tickinter, right? As you saw in the video, I kind of displayed it with this Tickinter, so it's not really complicated. And this m.pi is where I gathered those values. I mean, remember I said like we gathered values of the brown area, right? And that area is consisted of RGB values, and this is where I gather those RGB values. I by hand like spend time finding the right spot. So slot regions, like this is assigned for slot 1, and I spent time to find the correct ratio to correct place that when cropped out is gonna give us that brown area. Then I stored that in values.txt, and let's open that too. Values.txt here. So this is the first RGB value of the first area, second area, and so on. We have values colors. No, values is the right one, I think. Load data, this was my main function, but before that I should say that I used actually multi-threading. I use subprocess to run 2 different tasks, but it's like multi-threading. I mean, I use tickinter.py to display and loaddata.py to basically handle the logistics. I also use some character.json which stored our opponent's hand. So this is like basically our opponent's hand, right? And tickinter retrieves data from this. This is how we know this basically depicts our opponent's hand, and tickinter basically displays that. Load data updates this. So that's basically the whole idea. Detect card, this is the logic that I described. Like we use, where is that template matching in here. If it's greater than 72%, then that characters are the same and stuff. There are some other logics behind it. This is where we know our opponent placed the card, because well, this if it detects whether that brown area is still brown or a card is in there. A card is like hovering over there. Like if like I mean, it's kind of complicated, but I think you guys get it. What else we have? Yeah, that's basically the whole idea. Actually, I cropped the the screen with MSS. So I use MSS like slot regions, these two, to crop parts from our screen. And we have filter, of course. Yeah, that's all for this video. If you still haven't, please check out the video that I played with this code. It was actually fun. Yeah, that's all for this video. If you have any question, please leave a comment and have a great day.